Hello and welcome to The Mohit Show. Today I will be covering a post from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. You might notice from this video's duration that I'm trying shorter form videos to see how that works. Now to this video's post, titled, "What Lives is Gender-Affirming Care Saving?" This is from a desisted male individual. We are constantly told that gender-affirming care for kids is crucial and life-saving. That claim infuriates me the most because it seems to either be flat-out untrue or at least very blown out of proportion. The number of radical gender-affirming procedures on minors is now at the highest it's ever been. There really was no such thing pre-2010. So logically, if gender-affirming care is saving the lives of kids, we should be seeing youth suicide rate drop since the radical increase of gender-affirming care. However, there is no such drop. In fact, it just keeps increasing every year. The other way around, if gender-affirming care is life-saving, we should logically expect to see the countries without gender-affirming care for kids have a higher youth suicide rate than the countries that do have gender-affirming care for kids. Yet we do not see any obvious indication of that. If their initial claim is true, the countless gender-affirming treatments nowadays should be saving the lives of thousands of kids who would have committed suicide without it. But where are such kids? Something doesn't add up. From the comments, a desisted individual comments, "It's not life-saving. It's like a religion, and one that actually influences suicidal behavior. Being told you will commit suicide greatly increases chances of suicide. We know very well that suicidality is contagious. It's a well-known psychological observation. When I was trans, I was suicidal as well. I was suicidal before I was trans and during. I blamed it on dysphoria, on the things I could obsess over. And yet, life is funny, and the things you wanted to kill yourself over when you were 13 seem to be insignificant when you're 25. Same for the gender stuff I was obsessing over. I gave it to myself, I actively created it, and fixated on it." You're 100% right that if the claim was true in any sense, we would have some data based on places with gender-affirmative care versus without, or before and afters, but there is no difference. And in fact, I would argue that most people become more suicidal after and during trans ID, because it's fundamentally difficult to chase being something that you can never be. For example, if I was upset that I was, let's say, Native American, and if I fixated on all the ways my life is bad due to that and focused on how much I wanted to be white, and tried to pretend to be white despite everyone still seeing me as Native, and struggling with myself and other people, and just focused on that every waking minute, I could become suicidal about that, especially if I'm told by other people who want to change race that I'm likely to kill myself. There's no record of a cohort of kids killing themselves throughout history for not being able to transition, not at all close to the numbers of people claiming to be trans nowadays. It's a social contagion, a psychological affair, and a current cultural happening. A detrans female individual comments on the original post, "I 100% believe in my heart that if I had went through with top surgery when I was 18, I would have killed myself by now. I'm 21. There's almost no doubt in my mind that I wouldn't have been strong enough to handle the grief once I realized that I made such a mistake. This terrifies me for other people." The trans male individual replies to that, "Same for me, and bottom surgery. I don't know how I could live if I had gone in with full medical transition. So glad to have my working parts." A detrans male individual replies to the original post, "Provided with a web address to complete the survey online. Online survey not reliable. National Center for Transgender Equality, NCTE. I'm very familiar with this organization. They live and raise money with the theme of transgenders on the verge of suicide and try to place the guilt and blame on those that do not support their agenda of subsidized care and workplace, educational coddling of trans persons. I have worked in mental health for 10 years. Transgenders are more likely to have suicide ideation after they have started with the gender switch than before. Sadly, contemplating suicide is promoted by trans culture to draw attention for activists hoping to be taken seriously." A desisted male individual comments on the original post, The fact is, gender dysphoria is never the main factor causing suicidal thoughts/feelings. It's always accompanied by other issues, mental disorder, anxiety, depression, etc. This claim is just gaslighting the kids and emotionally blackmailing parents. It's sad, to be honest. Someone who's questioning their own gender transition comments on the original post. There's a significant inverse association between treatment with pubertal suppression during adolescence and lifetime suicidal ideation among transgender adults who ever wanted this treatment. Link in the description. After adjustment for temporal trends and potential confounders, we observed 60% lower odds of depression and 73% lower odds of suicidality among youths who had initiated puberty blockers or gender-affirmative hormones, compared with youths who had not. A detrans female individual replies to that, the first study didn't include anyone who later detransitioned, nor did it include anyone who never had suicidality and then later became suicidal. That is a major flaw in my opinion. They legit found what they were looking for by omitting respondents that they didn't want to see. One of the researchers also has a pretty significant conflict of interest from his funding. He's being paid by a textbook company to make this research for a textbook on pediatric transgenderism. The second study is incredibly small, with a tiny sample size of only about 200. The research is important but being conducted in a biased manner and touted as objective fact. Meanwhile, studies on detransitioners get defunded and shut down the moment there's trans outcry. And a desisted individual also replies to that same comment. These studies are not long-term. The first one was done over a year, and the second one was just an instantaneous questionnaire. Not only that, but the samples are taken from people who are currently identifying as trans. Because these studies were so short-term, either just 1 year or just a few minutes long, there's no tracking of long-term happiness or suicidality. Follow the exact same individuals for 20 years and then see what they think. Lastly, in addition, religions genuinely do make people happier. The placebo effect does work to a good extent, but for how long? If you ask people who are in a very religious church if they're happier before or after they found God or whatever, I'm sure 90% would answer that they're happier. This does not prove the existence of a God, nor does it mean that that church will be good for everyone. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and please like, comment, or subscribe if you want to support this content. Thanks again, and see you later.